Here we are. Chelek Yud Beis, Tzav, the Sikha of Tzav. It's a little bit of a longer Sikha, and it really divides into two parts. The first half is going to be a discussion on a Rashi. Take one Rashi, and as we commonly do, we'll ask a bunch of questions, and we will explain the Rashi. Then there's a second half to the Sikha, where the Rabbi delves into some of the details that were brought up earlier in the Sikha with regards to the Korban Toda and with regards to the Lachmei Toda, the breads that were brought with the Toda, and with regards to the Mizmer L'Seda that we say in the morning, and we will elaborate on them as we get there. So, let us begin, page 20. Rashi beParshasenu maitik min akasu vasateves imal Toda yakrivenu. The pasuk in Parshas Tzav, we're going through various different karbonis and the details that are relevant to these karbonis, and it brings up the Korban Toda. If a person is bringing it for a Korban Toda, umefaresh Rashi taiches, Rashi explains as follows: imal dvarei do al neshen nasaloi. If he's bringing this as a thank you for a nes, for a miracle that happened to him, Kigoin, for example, Yerdei Hayam, those who go down to travel through the ocean, the Hilchei Midbariyos, those who travel through the desert, V'chavushe Beis Asurim, those who are confined to a jail, to a prison, V'cholish Nisrape, or a person who was ill and became and was healed, Sheim Tzrichim Lahedis, which they have an obligation to thank Hashem. Shekasuv behen, because about these four scenarios, these four cases, it says in Tehillim, Kapitel Kuf Zayin, Yedu L'Hashem Chazdei, they will thank Hashem for His kindness, V'niflaisav Livnei Adam, and for the wonders that He has shown to humankind. And the pasuk continues, V'yizbechu zivchei Seder, and these people, these who are thanking Hashem, will bring Toda offerings, offerings of thanks. So therefore, on these four things, these four cases, a person has to thank Hashem. So if a person was neither promised, pledged the Korban Shlamim for one of these miracles that occurred to him, halalu shalmei Toda, these would be shalmei Toda, a Shlamim of a Toda of thanks, utuunes lechem ha'amor be'inyan, and then you would have to bring with it the breads that were brought, the Lachmei Toda that were brought together with the Korban Toda, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And the carbon could be eaten for one day and one night, as it's explained here in the pasuk. So this is what Rashi tells us. Rashi tells us that if a person is bringing a Korban Shlamim as a thank you for a nes that happened to him, and Rashi gives the example of Yerdei Hayam, going down into the water, into the ocean, going through the desert, coming out of jail, and coming out of an illness, that you have to you have to thank Hashem, and if you do so, it's a Korban Toda, it's a Shlamim, it's a Shalmei Toda, and you would bring it together with a Lachmei Toda, the breads, and you would eat it for Yom V'Layla, as the pasuk in our parsha talks about. V'tzarach lavin, and on this Rashi we have 6 questions, 6 very basic questions. Number 1, halei Toda pirushe heda stam. The word Toda means thank you, thanksgiving. U'minole l'Rashi l'dayek she'im al Toda hakasuv kan hainu heda al neis dafka. Where does Rashi, what is the origin, what is the source for Rashi? Where does Rashi know to specify that when the Toda says over here im al Toda, it's referring to a heda al neis, thanking Hashem for a miracle? Very basic question. How does Rashi know that we're talking about a miracle? Maybe it's just a thank you. Second question. Even if Rashi has a compelling proof that we're talking about over here to thank Hashem for a miracle, where does Rashi know to specify that a nes means these 4 Nissim and no other nes, or no other nes? Should Rashi maybe take it from Yad B'Firushay? If you're going to tell me that the source of Rashi is from the pasuk in Tehillim, which Rashi himself brings in his own Pirush, which is the pasuk from Tehillim Kapitel Yud Zayin, and in that Kapitel, in that Tehillim, the pasuk tells us of 4 types of nes. still doesn't answer our question. How does Rashi know al pi pshuti shel mikra in the basic understanding of the pasuk that the pasuk here is referring to those four Nissim? One can say that a person should bring a carbon for all different types of nes. And that pasuk in Tehillim Kapitel Kuf Zayin, he's bringing examples from different categories, different ideas. Because you can't expect the pasuk to enumerate every type of possible nes. So the pasuk over there is bringing an example of different nisim, but maybe in the understanding of the pasuk, there are many more than just those four for which you would have to bring a carbon Toda. And how does Rashi know that is in Pshuti Shel Mikra that it's these four Nissim upon which a person would bring a carbon Toda? Gimel, let's take it a step further. Even if there is a compelling proof from the pasuk that it is only on these four nisim that a person brings a carbon Toda. Why does Rashi have to enumerate them? Wouldn't it have been sufficient for Rashi to bring one as an example, and then allude to the other three with the word v'chulu, and to conclude that say v'chulu, etc. And all the, in other words, it would say in the Rashi again yedei hayam v'chulu shekasav ben yedei l'shem chasdei, etc. And all the other ones that say yedei l'shem chasdei. As it is customary for Rashi in numerous places in his Pirush on Toda where he says the v'chulu to reference to other things that we have to know about, but we can look it up by looking at the v'chulu. So question one is, how do we know that b'chlal it has to be a nes? Even if you question base, even if you tell me that it's a nes, how do you know that only these four nisim? And question three, even if you know that it's only these four nisim, why does Rashi here in a pirush, in a commentary, versus in a place of halacha, why does Rashi have to enumerate the four of them? Question Dalet. Mahi kavanas Rashi be'isifei la'achar shemafaret es adalet nisim im al achas meil another shlamim halolu shalmei Toda in v'chulu. Why does Rashi have to continue after listing the four nisim for which a person would bring a carbon Toda and say that if a person was neder shlamim, a pledge of shlamim, then this would be a shalmei Toda? Isn't that the simple meaning of the words of the pasuk? So the fact, if you haven't told me that there's Nissim, which Nissim it is, fine, that's not in the pasuk. Rashi has to tell it to us. But the fact that if you bring it as a carbon, this is a shalmei Toda, this is what the pasuk is actually saying. What is Rashi adding by elaborating on this in the Pirush? Question Hey is about the order of the list. These four that have a mitzvah to bring a carbon Toda to thank Hashem, is Rashi brings in the following order. First, Yedei Hayam, those who go down into the ocean. V'helchim midbariyos, those who travel through the desert. V'chavushe beis ha'asurim, those who were confined in a prison. V'chelish and esrapeh. That's the order. Then you move on. Lama shina Rashi mi'aseder shekasuv behen kilashn Rashi b'Tehillim. Why, if Rashi is quoting Tehillim and he says he's quoting the Tehillim, why does Rashi change from the order that is written in Tehillim? When Tehillim it starts with Helchim Midbariyos, then it says Chavushe Beis Ha'asurim, those who were in jail. Chelish and Esrapeh, someone who was sick. V'Yedei Hayam, someone who went through those, traveled overseas. So you can't answer to me that the reason why Rashi changes the order from Tehillim is because Rashi wants to follow the more simple approach, which would be to list those which are more common, listed in the order of frequency. What happens more often? The more often it happens, the earlier it will be listed. You can't say that. Because the order that Rashi uses is not the order of frequency. The Gemara also brings it in a third order. We have Rashi's order, we have the Tehillim's order, and then we have the Gemara in Brachas that brings it in a different order. Different than Tehillim and also different than Rashi. What does the Gemara say? The Gemara says first Yerdei Hayam. Then the Gemara says Helchem Midbariyos. First those who travel overseas, and then those who travel through a desert. A person who was sick and became healed, and someone who was confined into a jail. So Taisus asks on the Seder of the Gemara that the Tehillim has a different order. When Tehillim begins with Helchem Midbariyos. So the Taisus asks on the Gemara, why does the Gemara change the order from Tehillim? V'tirtzu. And Taisus answers, in the Pasuk is going in the order of danger. The more dangerous, the earlier it comes in the list. The Gemara shows the order of frequency. That which is more frequent, that which is more common, comes first. Harei, shesidurim b'Rashi, einei b'seder demetzuyin tchila. I'm never b'Gemara. So if you wanted to answer to me that Rashi goes in the order of what is more common, what is more frequent, you can't say that because that's the Gemara's order. The Gemara is telling us the order of what is more frequent. So now we have three orders. We have the order of Rashi, we have the order of the Tehillim, which is going in the order of what's more dangerous. You have the order of the Gemara that's going in the order of what's more common. So this makes the question even greater on Rashi. He's not following the order of what is more dangerous as it is in Tehillim. The lake is Seder, not in the order of that which is more common. So what is Rashi's order, and why does it actually change? What is Rashi's order based on, and why does it actually change to be different than the Gemara and different than the Tehillim? Question Vav, sixth and final question on this Rashi. This is also on the grammar. Lama nakat Rashi chelish nitzrafa b'lashon yachid u'sh'ara gimel sugim b'lashon rabim. Why does Rashi say chelish nitzrafa in a lashon yachid, in a single tense, single term? And the rest of the three are b'lashon rabim, in plural. Neisef lazeh hari gamshina b'zeh b'lashon gemara. Not only is it not clear why Rashi has three of them in lashon rabim and one in lashon yachid, it also, in this too, Rashi changes from the Gemara. In the Gemara it says Yerdei Hayam and Helchem Midbariyos in lashon rabim. The traveling overseas and traveling through a desert, he says in lashon rabim, Umisha yachelev v'nisrape, Umisha yachaves v'beis hasurim, and the ill person who was healed and the person that was freed from jail, the Gemara uses a lashon yachid. And on the contrary, the Gemara's choice of terms makes sense in a very simple way. In other words, very logical. It's common in the world that a person doesn't travel through a desert alone, but he goes in a caravan, in a group of people. So to those who go down traveling in ships on the sea, it's only possible in a group of people. And therefore the Gemara says those in lashon rabim, but illness and jail, which generally speaking, this is something that comes to an individual. Therefore the Gemara says that in lashon yachid. So since this is so logical and so simple and so sensible, this is the terms that Rashi should have chosen. And yet, for some reason, Rashi says three of them, b'lashon rabim, and only the one of chayla is b'lashon yachid. So number one, how does Rashi know that Toda is only on a nes? Number two, how does Rashi know that the Toda is only on these four Nissim? Number three, even if he does know that, why does Rashi have to mention it? Enumerate all four of them. Number five, why does Rashi follow the explanation of the Nissim with the idea that these would be a Shalmei Toda. Number 5, what is the explanation in the order of the list of 4 that Rashi uses? And number 6, why does Rashi say 3 of them B'Lashon Yachid and 1 B'Lashon 3 of them B'Lashon Rabim and 1 B'Lashon Yachid, especially since he again is changing from the Gemara. Beis Abir B'Kol Now, there's going to be an explanation, which is a very basic explanation, and based on that, we'll understand all of the questions, the answers to all the questions. The Parshas Tzav, Ameduber B'Karbonos Elu She'Biyikaram Kvarnes Parshas Vayikra. In Parshas Tzav, we're discussing karbonos that primarily most of them were already discussed in Parshas Vayikra. Ella, in our parsha, each carbon that's being spoken about, new details are being added on that were not explained, they're not expressed in Parshas Vayikra, and therefore they're being explained again in Parshas Tzav. Each of the karbanos. Each time he introduces a carbon, he says, and this is the Toda, this is the teaching of this carbon. The reason why it says, this is the Toda of this carbon, even though we already know about this carbon from the previous parsha, he intends to introduce new details, and that's why he says, and we bring an example. In the Rashi explains in the beginning of this parsha, Allah pasuk v'zeis teras eila. It says the very first one in the parsha, like 2-3 psukim in, and it says that this is the Toda of the carbon eila. So Rashi says, Harei ha'inyan hazeh bo lelamed al hekter chalavim ve'evarim. This repetition of the carbon oil is teaching us about bringing the chalavim ve'evarim, the fat and the limbs that were not burnt up earlier in the day, that you could bring them all night, which wasn't told to us yet. For these details that Rashi brings, the pasuk tells us v'zeis teiras. And so too in all the karbonos that are discussed in Parshas Tzav, where it starts out with the words v'zeis teiras, that the purpose, the intention of the parsha is to add on, is to introduce unbeknownst yet details that are unbeknownst to us yet. And Rashi himself explains in certain of them what these details are. When it comes to the carbon shlamim, we don't find any new details. You have one pasuk that says, and this is the Toda of the carbon shlamim which a person will bring to Hashem. And then nemar miyad, immediately it says, imal Toda yakrivenu, if a person wants to bring a carbon Toda, he's right away introduces the carbon Toda before explaining to us about the carbon shlamim. So then when it says the words, the pasuk before this one, seems to be utterly superfluous. Should have gone straight away to the carbon Toda, since always v'zeis teiras is introducing new details. And here it says v'zeis teiras with no new details. So why does it say v'zeis teiras? This is bothering Rashi. So Rashi answers this question, and he explains. And this is what we had said in the first question. Why does Rashi say these words at the end of the Rashi? So Rashi is saying like this: if a person wants to thank Hashem, and he brings the examples of these 4 Nissim, and because of that a person was nadar shlamim, he offered a shlamim. Notice the word shlamim. Halolu shalmei teida einu tu'unais. So then this carbon or these carbonos would be a shalmei Toda, a Toda that is part of a shlamim, that is a detail within shlamim. He's implying to tell us that the words imal Toda is a continuation to the v'zeis teiras of the chashlamim. This parsha is adding a new category, a new element within the family of the carbon shlamim. Allah Duber Parshas Vayikra, which shlamim was already discussed in Parshas Vayikra, but in Parshas Tzav there's a new detail, and what's that detail? Carbon Toda. which has various different dinim that are not in the rest of the shlamims. For example, number one, the carbon Toda comes with loaves of bread. It's one thing, and the carbon Toda and the loaves can only be eaten for, I'm not sure about the loaves, but at least the carbon Toda can only be eaten l'yom v'layla. Unlike the carbon shlamim, a regular shlamim, which we say every morning in davening, shnei yomim v'layla echad. A regular shlamim, you have 2 days and 1 night. And a carbon Toda, you have 1 day and 1 night. So being that the carbon Toda is a different concept within the shlamim, therefore it's introduced here because of the new details. But the chiddush over here is that the Toda is a detail in the carbon shlamim. How does Rashi know this? From the fact that it says he will be makriv it as a carbon Toda, v'lo yakriv stam. Shapirusha yakriv oisa yakriv enu means he will be makriv it. So the Chashlamim because of lifnei is that what's the it? Imal Toda yakriv enu. If as a Toda you will be makriv it. He's referring to the carbon shlamim that was mentioned in the previous pasuk. Ukilu kasu imal Toda yakriv as the Chashlamim, as if the pasuk would have said, if he wants to be makriv a carbon Toda, if for a Toda he wants to be makriv a carbon shlamim, din kach v'kach, the din is as follows. So this answers our question 4. Why Rashi adds all this piece? Because the whole Rashi is coming for this reason. The whole purpose of Rashi here is to answer the question, what's the chiddush of the carbon shlamim? Why is carbon shlamim being mentioned here? And what's the chiddush taka? That the carbon Toda is a prat within, is a detail within carbon shlamim. And the case of the carbon Toda has different details that a regular shlamim does not have. Therefore, it says, I'm going to go back and discuss the carbon shlamim, and I'm going to introduce a new detail in shlamim, namely the carbon Toda, and I'm going to give you the details that are relevant to the carbon Toda. That's the chiddush of Rashi, and that's why Rashi discusses it here and explains it, and that's why there's an arichis at the end of Rashi, which was question 4. So you might ask, why doesn't Rashi explain that in the previous pasuk? If Rashi is explaining why it says v'zoyis Toda zevachashlamim in the previous pasuk, why does Rashi wait until this pasuk to explain this? Should have said right away, v'zoyis Toda zevachashlamim, that he came to me mefarish the union of carbon Toda. So he says 2 things. Number 1, umikivan shai chachal lepirushei himitevas yakrivenu. Number 1, the proof of Rashi that we're talking about a carbon shlamim, that Toda is a part of shlamim, is from the fact that it says in this pasuk yakrivenu, which is what explained in the previous paragraph. Number 2, the gam hakushya hanal eina misereres ala pasuk v'zested zavachashlamim. This pasuk, this question doesn't come up on the pasuk v'zested zavachashlamim, because at that point we don't know what's going to happen next. He says this is the Toda zavachashlamim. Yet there's no questions yet. Only after we come to the next pasuk, which goes straight to carbon Toda, which seemingly at first glance it seems that the pasuk is introducing a brand new carbon. So all of a sudden now comes my question: what happened to the carbon shlamim? Therefore Rashi explains this, the pirush here, not on the previous pasuk, because A, we didn't have the question, and B, we didn't have the word yakrivenu, but over here that we say yakrivenu, and over here when the question is comes up, what happened to the carbon shlamim? Over here Rashi says, ala pasuk imal Toda, he says this Toda is a detail in carbon shlamim. Beautiful, utterly beautiful. Answers the question. It explains the structure of the pasuk. Explains why Rashi added in this whole extra arichis, because this is the chiddush of Rashi. The main chiddush of Rashi is not when you bring a carbon Toda. The main chiddush of Rashi is that a Toda is a prat in carbon shlamim, and that's why it says v'zoyis Toda zavach shlamim, even though there's no other details being introduced with regards to shlamim. Now let's continue in Eis Gimel to learn about the rest of Rashi, where he talks about the Nissim. This idea that the carbon Toda is part of Shlamim. And that's why it says Yakri Venu, and that's why it says V'zeis Teras. This is the main Chiddush of Rashi, the primary Chiddush of Rashi. Because Rashi b'derech agav, but Rashi continues, or not continues, but Rashi comes. B'derech agav, in other words, as he's going along the way, Rashi also includes b'teich divrei hapirush, and now within this explanation of Rashi, gam davar amuvam b'parshas b'lei pirushei, he also explains to us something else, something that probably is understood anyway. As we will explain on the next page why we must understand it this way, so we might understand it anyway. Nevertheless, Rashi mentions this along the way. I'm not sure how to say b'derech agav in English, but hopefully you know what b'derech agav means. What is Rashi telling us? Sha'chiyuv lahavi carbon Toda hurak al daled Nissim elu. That the chiyuv, the obligation to bring a carbon Toda, is only on these 4 Nissim. In other words, so the main chiddush of Rashi is the fact that a Toda is a prat in Shlamim. And once Rashi is talking about this, he also includes in his pirush the details of when one would bring a carbon Toda, but it's only b'derech agav, as an aside. And he says in the brackets, therefore Rashi does not bring it in a separate pirush, in a separate stanza, in a separate section, where Rashi klal amadur kam pamim shemakim shmefarish betev achas bezen yanen nefrodim maitik Rashi oso ateva pamnei sefers k'dei lechalak beninyan leinyan, as a rule that has been discussed in other times, other places, that if Rashi is telling 2 different things on one word, he'll bring the same word twice to imply that these are 2 separate pirushim on the same word. Here Rashi doesn't do that. Here Rashi includes everything under the same keppel, under the same quote from the Pesach, under the same dibur hamaschil. Why? Because what I'm going to talk about now, says Rashi, is understood. I'm just bringing it in as an aside, as something extra, so to speak, something that you probably know anyway. And therefore I'm not going to make a whole separate dibur hamaschil out of it, because it's something that you anyways know. Now, what do I know? How do I know that the chiyuv to bring a carbon Toda is only on these 4, is only by these 4 Nissim, and not by other Nissim, or not by any other case? The question Aleph was maybe any time I want to say thank you. She says like this: this is the proof. This is the compelling detail. Moving b'pashtus. It's understood very simply. V'cheinu al dvar halacha v'adrash, and this also fits in according to halacha, also fits in according to the drushim. Shatom mitzrichim leidus lakadosh baruch hu al kol hatev shu geimel lechol yachid v'yachid. We have to constantly thank Hashem for all the good that He gives to each and every individual. Ki kol echad v'echad b'nei Yisrael maimin b'Hashem. Every Yid believes in Hashem. V'yedei shekol masha yeshle, and he knows that everything that he has, gamim bali b'derech hateva, even if it comes naturally, harei zabah me'akadosh baruch hu, it really and truly is coming from Hashem. As Avram Avinu would say to anybody from the world that would come into his tent and would eat from his food, he would say, Baruch Hu l'misha chalta mishaloi. Say thank you, bless the one who you have eaten of his. You think that you ate of mine. You ate from the one who spoke and brought the world into being. So Avram Avinu taught that to the whole world, to all mankind, that we have to thank Hashem for the food or for the gifts that He gives us. Just like we have to thank a human being who would give us a present regardless of who it is. So for sure, most certainly, one would have to thank Hashem on the many gifts that He gives each and every one of us every single day. And therefore the Chazal arranged that we should thank and praise and sing to Hashem every single day in the davenings and in the brachas. Not only do we do this in davening, But very often in the Sikhs, you want to see, do we know this from earlier Psukim? We find the same thing in various stories in Toda, several times, many times even before Parshas Tzav. Where the Eibishter was thanked even just for the good news that he is going to do good, he was thanked. And we bring two examples. Number one, Vayiven Sham Mizbeach LaHashem. In the beginning of Parshas Lech Lecha, when the Eibishter tells Avram Avinu, that I will give this land of Eretz Yisrael to your descendants, to your offspring. So it says, Vayiven Sham Mizbeach LaHashem, that Avram Avinu built Mizbeach to Hashem. Upirish Rashi, and Rashi himself says, Al Psuras HaZera, Al Psuras Eretz Yisrael, that Avram learned two things. Number one, he learned that he was going to have children. And number two, he learned that Eretz Yisrael was going to be given to them. So he builds a Mizbeach to thank Hashem. This is in Parshas Shmois. When Moshe comes and speaks to Aaron and the Zkenim, and then Aaron comes and he speaks to the Yidden. It's not in the Sikha, I'm just reading from what I wrote on the bottom, the Pasuk in Chumash Shmois. So Aaron conveyed to the Yidden what Moshe was told by the Eibishter to speak to the Yidden, and he made the miracles, and it gave the Yidden hope that the Geula is going to come out of Mitzrayim. So it says, the people believed him. And then the pasuk ends, when they bowed down and they prostrated themselves to the Eibishter, and they bent they bowed their heads and they prostrated themselves. And many times in the Psukim it says this concept that Yidden, or whoever it was, thanked the Eibishter for things that he did or for things that he said he would do. So it's clear and it's understood, and it's aside from davening, and aside from seichel, and aside from the Psukim, that we have to thank Hashem constantly, every day, for all the beautiful things, all the kindnesses that he does to us. So if that's the deal, if we have a mitzvah to thank Hashem constantly, it would come out that every Yid should have to bring a carbon Toda every single day, or maybe even several times in one day. But it's a davar bilti miskabel al hadas, which doesn't make any sense. And even if you would say that you're right, you can't bring it every day, so let's bring it once a year for the whole year. Even that would be a major chiddush, a novel concept, that the Toda would have to tell us explicitly. And the Toda doesn't. Nowhere in the Toda does it say that a person should bring a carbon Toda, or a person should bring a carbon Toda for every single day, or even once a year, for all the things that happen to him during the day. So therefore, according to Pesach Mikra, it's very obvious that you don't bring a carbon Toda for every thank you. When would you bring a carbon Toda? On something that's unusual, something that's out of the ordinary. Then you bring a carbon Toda. And that's why you're not yetzer with a regular bracha, like the bracha we make on food, which is thanking Hashem not just for the food, but we're thanking Hashem for the bracha of parnasa that allowed us to buy the food or to get the food. So a bracha is something that you do on a regular basis. But a carbon Toda, this is for something that's unusual. Carbon Toda comes only for a nes. So this answers question Aleph, which we asked, how do I know that the carbon Toda is not for anything? How do I know that it's dafka for a nes? It's very simple, because you have to thank Hashem all the time. So if any time you want to thank Hashem, you have to bring a carbon, you'd never be able to stop bringing carbonas. Beautiful concept. In other words, we're so busy thanking Hashem, even in times of difficulty, in times of hardship. We're so thankful to Hashem that we would be bringing non-stop carbonas. It makes no sense. So obviously, if we're establishing a carbon to thank Hashem, it must be for something unique, something out of the ordinary. Consequently, we now know that a carbon Toda has to come for a nes, for a miracle. But which miracle? Still not fully explained. We know that for 40 years in the Midbar, the Yidden were being fed every day bread from heaven, heavenly bread, in a miraculous way. Like the Pasuk says, I'm going to rain down upon you bread from heaven. They also had a well, the well of Miriam, that gave them water to drink and water for a mikveh. Like it says, like the Pasuk says, that you'll hit the rock and the water will come out and the nation, people will have what to drink. They also had an anon, a cloud, the ananei covered that was protecting them from all the negative things that were outside the cloud. The Rashi says on the words tzevi lachem, go out and go to battle. Go out of within the clouds, and battle with them, because in the clouds there was protection. Shekol Elu, all these things, the protection of the clouds, the Beida Shel Miriam, the Mon Min Hashemayim, Areim Nes, are all miraculous. V'imal Nes Michayavim L'Le'avi Carbon, and if on any Nes you would have to bring a carbon, Nimtza Shekolechot V'Echad Miyoyser the Samach Ribu MiYisrael, this would come out, and every single Yid, more than 600,000 people, still being in the Midbar, would have been obligated, and therefore would have actually brought or offered carbon. They would have brought every day. One came down, that's a nace. Yeah, you wanted to get a drink, you went to Be'er Shel Miriam. What a miracle! You got to go bring a carbon. Something that we can't say. There's no way to say this. It would have been impossible. It doesn't say it anywhere in the Pasuk, in the Chumash. We cannot make this up, that every single time, every single day, 600,000 Yidden, more than 600,000 Yidden, were bringing a carbon Toda. And this is the answer to question 2. Question base in the Sikha was, how do I know that you don't bring a carbon for any nace? So he says, we're compelled to say that you cannot bring a carbon Toda on any nace, because if they would have brought a carbon Toda on any nace, they would have been constantly bringing carbonis in the midbar. It must be that there are only specific Nissim for which a carbon Toda would be brought. Which one would they be? How do I figure out which Nissim? And since in Kapitel Kuf Zayin and Tehillim, where it says the words Yedu Lashem Chazdei, he brings various different Nissim, and he says over there explicitly, and they will bring the offerings of thanks. How they move on? So that's understood that these 4 are specific. So now we understand the fact that it says over there Yedu Hashem Chazdei, and it says and the pasuk and the capital chooses 4 things. We now can understand, being that we now know that you can't bring a carbon for any nace. There has to be certain Nissim. Let's look at a capital of Zayin, where it speaks about a carbon Toda, it speaks about thanking Hashem, and it brings 4 examples. Probably those examples are specific, because those are the ones for which you would bring a carbon Toda. Since we must say, as mentioned above, that not every nace brings a carbon Toda, only a special Nissim. And even though in the Psukim of Chumash, it does not explain which carbonis which Nissim you would have to bring a carbon for. But since in Tehillim it does explain about certain miracles, it makes sense to say that over there in Kapitel Kuf Zayin, they weren't just brought as an example, they're brought there specifically. Because only on these 4 one would bring a carbon Toda. Especially since the pasuk of Kuf Zayin in Tehillim brings 4 examples. If a person wants to bring an example to something, he brings 1 or 2. If you bring 4, it's even more sensible to say that these are being brought specifically because these are the 4 and they're not just being brought as an example. The next question of Rashi was, why does of the Rebbe of the Sikha was, why does Rashi have to enumerate all four of them? Even if you're going to tell me, and we've come to the conclusion now that these are the four, because it has to be Nissim Miyuchadim, it has to be special Nissim. And how are we going to choose Tamazay from the Veltarein? How are we going to choose Nissim? We're going to look at Kapitel Tilim where it speaks about carbon Toda, and we see four examples. Perfect. These are the four examples of when a carbon Toda is brought. The next question Gimel was, why does Rashi have to enumerate all of them? So he says like this: "V'afal became in Rashi mistapek bavi akasov mibli pirut advarim." Rashi does not suffice by bringing the pasuk and not enumerating the four. Ki kasov zeh v'yizbechu zivchei Seder nemar beferish esachelish nesrapa. The word v'yizbechu zivchei Seder, which is brought deeper into the pasuk, deeper into the kapitel, is mentioned next to the case of someone who was sick, who was ill, and was healed. So one would think that maybe only a chelis in Isra'apa brings a carbon Toda. But therefore Rashi enumerates and says that it's not just by the chelis in Isra'apa, but by all four of the Nissim mentioned there, you would bring a carbon Toda. If you're in the question, the Rebbe mentioned in the question, why couldn't he just say one of them and say v'chulu? So he could have said chelus and zrapa v'chulu. Ki mizeh hayunu lemeidim lo yisef rak ma shekasav la'acharei zeh. Because if it said chelus and zrapa etc., then I would think that only that which was mentioned after chelus and zrapa, hainu yerdei hayam, which is the travelers of in the ocean, in the seas. But I would know more than that, because that's chelis and israpa v'chulu. So I know that a chela, and I know v'chulu, etc., whatever comes after it. So in order for Rashi to tell us that this includes also those who go in the midbar and those who come out of jail, Rashi says, so he has to also say etc. So basically what he's saying is, so there's two v'chulus to allude to the two that Aaron said. He might as well just say them already, all of them. Therefore Rashi says all four. In other words, he says, because that's where it says v'chulu, which is the reference to the one after that has to be said to know the next one. Then you have to say because you have to know that which was said beforehand. And then you get another v'chulu. You might as well just say it already. So therefore, this answers the question of why Rashi has to enumerate all four, because if Rashi didn't say all four, I wouldn't have known that all four have to be in carbon Toda. I would have thought either just chelis nisrape, or either chelis nisrape and yerdei hayam, if he would have just said the word v'chulu. So in order to make it clear that you have to bring a carbon Toda by all of them, Rashi lists and enumerates all four. The last thing we still have to answer is the Seder and Yanim. Why does Rashi put it in this order? And the Lashon Rabbim and Lashon Yachid. Eis Dalet. Vinei, Meyachash Rashi mefaret kol Dalet Nissim. Hinei otzarech lefartom dafke b'Seder shemeviyam. Now that we know why Rashi has to enumerate the four Nissim, we also are going to understand that the order that Rashi brings is an order that he must use. The Pashtus move on, it's understood very simply when under this course, but Pashtus, in other words, it's understood even to a child, to a ben Chumash the Mikra. Learning Chumash, when you're placing upon a person a certain obligation connected to an event that occurred, if it occurred with the person himself, it's much easier to understand the details of the person, details of what he has to do and the reason of the chiyuv. Today that we're in a time that we have to stay at home and stay away from other people, with social distancing as they're calling it, because there's not to spread a disease that's going around. So tell someone 2-3 weeks ago and tell them, you have to stay home. He look at you like you're crazy, because he didn't experience it. He doesn't know what you're talking. What do you want from me? But now that le'aleinu people have experienced it, if we haven't experienced it in our own Baruch Hashem, but we're watching others who are le'aleinu experiencing it, may the Eibush to send them a refuah shleima ukreva, b'teva nidiv aniglo l'mayla min al-teva legamri. So now we understand, now it makes some perfect sense when you're telling me do this, do that, because I'm experiencing it. So therefore we understand that if you're telling someone to do something based on something that's happening, if he experienced it, it'll be much more understood to him. Al piza move on. When the Yidden are being told that they have a chiyuv, an obligation, to bring a korban Toda on specific miracles. It's mistaber, it's logical, it's sensible that we would begin with those events that occurred in their lives, that they would be able to understand how big of a nace it is and how important it is to thank Hashem for it. Cain move on. It's also understood that if various Nissim occur to them, for which they would be mechuyev, they would be obligated in a korban Toda, they have to be mentioned according in the chronological order of events. And only later to mention an obligation on a nace that has not yet occurred to them at all. Of the four miracles for which a person has to bring a korban Toda, three of them happen to the Yidden, and in the order the Rashi enumerates them. First, they were over Hayam. First, they crossed the ocean, or in this case, the Yam Suf. And then they went and they traveled in the Midbar. And then it was nigzer, it was decreed upon them by Hashem that they would be confined in the Midbar, or locked up in the Midbar. And in the next paragraph, he brings two examples of where you find that they were locked in the Midbar. One, the fact that they were going to be stuck in the Midbar for 40 years and not get out. But he's going to say that we're not 100% sure whether the Yidden knew about this. And he's going to say, besides that, the Yidden, when Moshe Rabbeinu went L'mayla, the Yidden were told they have to stay in the Midbar for 40 days. And at that point, they must have felt locked up. They weren't going anywhere. They didn't have Moshe Rabbeinu. And they must have felt like they were in jail. Let's do it inside. So the Eibishter was gazed on them that they should be in Midbar. Rak b'neihem yatsu mimenu la'achrei 40 shana, and only their children, the next generation, left the Midbar after 40 years. How do they even know that they're going to be stuck there for 40 years? And that they would not be going into Eretz Yisrael at the end. Rashi says on the pasuk in the Az Yashir, he brought them. So Rashi says that Moshe Rabbeinu was saying nevuah that he would not bring the Yidden into Eretz Yisrael. He's going to bring them, implying that Moshe Rabbeinu was not going to bring them into Eretz Yisrael. And from this, we understand that the Yidden knew that they weren't going to go into Eretz Yisrael. So we're now, before we get back to the discussion at hand, we have to make sure, did the Yidden know about this? So the is Moshe Rabbeinu talking. So it says in Rashi, Nisnabe Moshe, that Moshe said this nevuah, Shelo Yikonis, and the Rebbe adds in parentheses, Lo Yikonsu, and that would include that also the Yidden of this der would not go in La'aretz and Eretz Yisrael. But all the Yidden sang the Shira. So whatever they meant, whatever Moshe meant when he said Tiviyemai, the Yidden also said Tiviyemai. So the Yidden certainly knew that they weren't going to go into Eretz Yisrael. This discussion of whether Moshe knew, whether the Yidden knew about it or not, is really only for the depth of it, to delve into something deeper. But it's not necessarily necessary for the simple understanding of things. It makes sense to say in Rashi, as is simply understood from the Psukim, even if Moshe said in the Nevuah that he wasn't going to go into Eretz Yisrael, and the Yidden, weren't going to go into Eretz Yisrael, At this point, he didn't know what he was saying. He didn't know what the prophecy that he was saying was about. And therefore, if he didn't know what it was about, the Yidden didn't either know about it. So in what case do we find the Yidden being in jail? We don't need to discuss this, whether they didn't know or didn't know that they were going to end up in Eretz Yisrael, that they weren't going to end up in Eretz Yisrael. Keep push it. When the Yidden were told that they have to wait in Midbar Sinai, in a desert, 40 days, until Moshe comes down from the mountain. Some of us, they felt as if they were confined in darkness. Salmavis means in the shadow of death, in a terrible place, and therefore they experienced the idea of jail. Now we understand why Rashi says that they were said to the Yidden in the following order: which is the order of that the Yidden experienced these Nissim. And then he said to them in the fourth category, which is being healed from an illness, which the Yidden had not experienced, but nevertheless they would still be chayiv in a carbon toda for chelish and nisrapa. The Rebbe points out in Order 31 that the lashon in Tehillim is yerdei ayam ba'aniyos, going down through traveling in the ocean in ships. And in Rashi, he doesn't mention the word ba'aniyos, because ayes that he's alluding to the experience of the Yidden of going through the Yam, and they didn't go ba'aniyos, they went by Abasha, they went on dry land. So therefore Rashi skips the word ba'aniyos, which is a beautiful diuk in the Rashi, that even the fact that he was skipping the word ba'aniyos is also b'kavana, is also intentional to reference the fact that with the order of Rashi's enumeration is based on what the Yidden experienced, which is the fact that they went into the Yamsuf, and in that case it wasn't ba'aniyos, it wasn't in ships. And then we had our sixth question on Rashi was, why does Rashi write 3 Beloshen Rabbim and 1 Beloshen Yachid? But now it makes perfect sense. We understand why Rashi says 3 of them Beloshen Rabbim and the 4th Beloshen Yachid. The first 3 miracles happened to all the Yidden together, so he says a Beloshen Rabbim. There's a Yerdei Ayam, the Yidden were a Yerdei Ayam, the Yidden were Helchim and Baris, and the Yidden were Chavushe Ve'Sasurim. Mashekin Asug Gourarie, but the 4th category, which is Chelish Nisrapet, did not happen to the Yidden as a group, and therefore he says a Lashon Yachid because it would happen to an individual. And the Bavorins over here, page 26. The intention here is not to say that the Yidden were actually mechuyev, actually obligated to being a carbon toda on Nissim elu sheiru lehem, on these Nissim that happened to them. In these events, as they occurred to the Yidden, at that time, there was no danger involved. They were going with Hashem, according to the instructions of Hashem. The Eibishter was going before them to lead the way. So clearly, if Hashem is leading the way in such a visible, such a tangible way, then clearly there was no sakana. And if there's no sakana, there's no nest, and it's still a nest that the Eibishter is leading them, but there's no sakana. And if there's no sakana, there's no need for a carbon toda. But nevertheless, yes, but because they experienced it, they would have understood that had they been doing this naturally in a similar situation, there would be sakana. And therefore, one who goes out of such a situation, we would be obligated in a carbon toda, because they could see what danger could potentially be there had they not been being led by Hashem in such a miraculous way. We still have one more question. Our 6 questions are answered, but we still have one more question where to understand the Stashi fully before we go to part 2 of the Sikha. Amram l'chirei move on. Harei yesam b'Mitzrayim hayekein chavushe beis ha'asurim v'al pi zahavalei l'Rashi havalei l'meimar havalei l'meimar The Rashi should have said first. Sorry, I got stuck with these how to read this word. But the question is like this: the Yidden were Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is a jail. So and Yitzias Mitzrayim was before Yerdei Hayam. So the Rashi should have first said Chavushe Beis Asurim, symbolizing the Exodus, the Yitzia, the Geula from Mitzrayim. Ki Yitzias Mitzrayim Arayis Tchil Lakay Lufnei Kriyas Yamsuf. The first thing that happened was Yitzias Mitzrayim, and the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim. Yidden were l'chayre in a jail. L'chayre they experienced going out of jail by going out of Mitzrayim, and that should have been mentioned first in Rashi because it happened first. And in the brackets, he's going to mention something over here, which we technically already mentioned in the previous paragraph. It's not exactly the same, but it's something similar. And even though on their Yitzia from Mitzrayim, they were not chayav a carbon teda. Even if Eretz Mitzrayim is a Beis Asurim, a jail, they still wouldn't be chayav a carbon teda. Because they went out of Mitzrayim even before the Eibishter gave them the commandment for a carbon teda. And therefore the obligation of carbon teda was not upon them. Which would the same thing would apply to Kriyas Yamsuf. So the Chayra, maybe that's why he doesn't say Chavushe Beis Asurim first, because they didn't have the Chiyuv. But nevertheless, we already explained that we're not talking about a case where they were actually obligated to be a carbon teda. We're just trying to make them understand easily the situation. So the Chayra, the question is, going out of Mitzrayim is going out of jail. So why is the Yitzias Mitzrayim not considered and mentioned by Rashi first? So we'll understand this by first understanding in a deeper way, in a more enjoyable way, the lashon of Rashi, where Rashi says v'chavushe beis asurim. He says the chavushe, they were locked up, they were confined in beis asurim, in a jail. To the a case of chavushim stam. It would have been enough to say chavushim, locked up. And we would have understood where were they locked up. They're locked up in jail. So why does Rashi say chavushe beis asurim? Why does Rashi specifically say the words jail? Rashi wants to specify that only someone who's actually in jail is mechuyev in the carbon teda. But if someone is locked up at home, for whatever reason, I guess the example we could bring is again the situation that we're in now, that we're staying home, we're isolated at home, for at least for most of the time, in order to stop the spread of an illness. So it's not a jail. Baruch Hashem, you could walk around at home. You're with your family. You're with there's food. There's svarim. There's talis and tefillin. You're a free person. So you're staying at home. So Rashi wants to tell us that a person is staying home, and even if it's for a lengthy period of time, it's not called being in jail. You don't have to bring a carbon teda for it. Only if you're chavas or beis asurim, only if you're in jail mamish, would you bring a carbon teda. And Rashi knows this from the simple meaning of the pasuk, Shemaskir Kan, which the pasuk says, those who are sitting in the darkness of a prison, in the shadow of death, those who are tied up in misery and in iron chains. So only someone who's locked up in a place of darkness, in the shadow of death, is mechuyev a carbon teda. Therefore, we understood that we can't use Mitzrayim as an example of going out of jail. Because being in Mitzrayim was not considered a jail, to obligate them in a carbon teda. Because sitting there, living there in Mitzrayim was not in darkness, in the shadow of death. They were in a comfortable place. They had all the goodness, all the blessings of the land of Mitzrayim were given to them. So therefore they had a good life. The fact that they were enslaved, they were doing an Avedas Perech, which certainly is not a wonderful Tuveres Mitzrayim. That's another concept. You don't have to bring a carbon Toda for getting out of slavery. But their very living, dwelling in Mitzrayim, doesn't make it considered dwelling in a jail just because they also had to do Avedas Perech. The midbar, the very place of the midbar, is a makom sakana. When Shikasa the Pasuk says, "Midbar agadol v'aneir," the great and awe-filled midbar desert, nachash akar, a place of snakes and scorpions. There's no water there. It's very, very thirsty. The midbar is a place, is a very scary place. Mitzrayim wasn't inherently a scary place. What was going on there was scary, but the place itself was not a scary place. Move on. So if someone is locked up in a midbar and can't get out, a place of nachash, akra, v'tzimoyin, and so on and so forth, that's considered sitting in darkness and in the shadow of death, and therefore that is a better example for chavushe beis hasurim, and that's why Rashi doesn't use Mitzrayim as an example. It uses Hilchei Midbariyos as the example, and this explains to us that Rashi uses this order because he's using the order that the Yidden experienced, and this answers all of our questions on Rashi. That Rashi over here is main chiddush of Rashi is to tell us that carbon Toda is part of carbon shlamim, a part of the family of shlamim, and then he tells us that also you would only bring a carbon Toda for special Nissim, because it's obvious that you can't bring a carbon Toda for every thank you. You can't even bring a carbon Toda for every Ness, as we see that you didn't bring a carbon Toda for every Ness that happened to them in the Midbar. There must be certain specific Nissim. And how do I find those Nissim? I'll find them in Tehillim, where the Tehillim specifically speaks about a carbon Toda and gives us 4 examples of Nissim. Rashi mentions all of them, so I should know that each and every one of them obligates the person to carbon Toda. I shouldn't think just 1 or 2 or whatever. Not all of them. And Rashi brings it in the order, because being that you want to be able to tell them what they experienced, he brings them first the things that they experienced, and within that he brings them in the order that they experienced. The Mitzrayim is not considered chavushe beis hasurim because it was not a scary place inherently. Eretz Goshen, as it was a place filled with much goodness for the Yidden. Now that Rashi is fully understood, we understand why the structure of Rashi and why Rashi teaches us these details the way he does. Now we're going to go into the second half of the Sikha. The second half of the Sikha is going to address various details it's going to begin based on this Rashi, and it's going to express various details about the Korban Toda, about the Lachmei Toda, and about Mizmer l'Seder. And we're going to begin Ois Vav with a question. The question is going to be, if we just established that going out of Mitzrayim was not considered Chavushe Beis Hasurim, for which a person would be Mechuyev, a carbon Toda, why do we find in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch that the Alter Rebbe says that we should do something at the Seder on Pesach night to remind us of the carbon Toda, because it's as if we went out of jail when we went out of Mitzrayim. Directly in contradiction to what we just said over here, that going out of Mitzrayim is not considered going out of jail. And let's learn it inside. We're going to have a question on what we just said over here, that going out of Mitzrayim was not considered going out of jail. And we're going to ask a question on what the Alter Rebbe says in Shulchan Aruch in Hilchos Pesach. He says like this: No yagin b'medinas elu. It is a minig in these countries. Shagimul matzah shel mitzvah. The 3 matzahs of the mitzvah that we're doing the mitzvah with on the night of Pesach at the Seder, that we're bringing the 3 matzahs to the Seder. The minig is heinas in meisarin echad kemach, that they should be made from 1 isarin of flour. Kein lachmei toda shehoyu gimel chalois nasais meisarin echad, where the 3 chalois were made from 1 isarin. Now, I'm going to stop for a moment and explain, but most of you probably know this already, but in case there's someone who doesn't know this exactly, I'll explain as follows. In the parsha that we're learning this week in Parshas Tzav, when it comes to the carbon Toda, it tells us that with the carbon Toda, a person would bring 40 breads, 40 loaves. And of the 40 loaves, they were divided into 4 types, 10 of each. There was chalois matzos, there was rikike matzos, and soles murbeches, which is called revucha, and then chalois lechem chametz. So the first 3, I wrote it down over here in English. Chalois matzos is unleavened loaves, rikike matzos is unleavened wafers, and soles murbeches or revucha is scalded fine flour. I don't know exactly the difference. I'm guessing that chalois matzos had no water, it was just oil. The kike matzos, you know what? I don't know what the difference is exactly, or how to say it exactly in English, but unleavened loaves, unleavened wafers, and scalded fine flour. In Hebrew, we're going to call it chalois matzos, chalois, rekikim, revucha, and these first 3, the chalois matzos, the rekikim matzos, and the soles murbeches, was not chametz. It was unleavened. And then there was a 4th type that was chalois lechem chametz that was actually chametz, and it wasn't brought actually on the mizbeach, so they weren't over on bringing chametz into the Beis Hamikdash because it wasn't nikdav on the mizbeach, but still it came along with the carbon Toda. So again, the carbon Toda had 40 loaves with it, 30 of them chalois matzos, rekike matzos, and soles murbeches were unleavened, non-chametz, and the chalois lechem chametz were chametz. Now, the amount of flour that was used for all 40 together, it says in Rashi, 5 soin Yerushalmiyos, which are 6 soin midbariyos. More importantly to us, to our conversation, it was made out of 20 isarim. The 40 loaves of bread were made out of 20 isarim. How does it break down? It breaks down as follows. The 10 loaves that were chametz were each an isarim each. So 10 of the 20 isarim were used for the 10 chalois that were chametz. Now I have 10 more isarim. This was used for the 30 loaves that were non-chametz. So if I break it down, it would mean that each 3 were used were made out of 1 isarim. So let's do that one more time. You have 40 loaves of bread, 30 are non-chametz, 10 are chametz. The 10 of chametz used 10 isarim. The 30 of non-chametz use the other 10 isarim, which if you break it down mathematically, it works out to 3 loaves per isarim of the non-chametz. Says the Alter Rebbe, that the 3 loaves that were not chametz were made out of 1 isarim. Therefore, what we should do is on Pesach, when we have 3 matzos, we should make it out of 1 isarim. And he says, "Lefichach anu oisin gam ken gimel matzos liyisarin." Therefore, we should use 3 matzos per isarin of flour. Zecher lelachmei Toda, which would be a remembrance of the lachmei Toda, the loaves that came with the carbon Toda. Shayesh beis ha'asurin chayav lavi Toda. Someone who goes out of jail has to bring a carbon Toda. Yonu Pesach, it's on a beis ha'asurin, and we on Pesach went out of jail. Mishibud Mitzrayim, from the slavery from Mitzrayim. And therefore on Pesach we make a zecher to lachmei Toda. So this is a shturmdike question on what we just said in previous ois, that going out of Mitzrayim is not considered beis ha'asurim. Harei shegam Mitzrayim nechshaves ke beis ha'asurim. But we see here from the Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch in Hilchos Pesach that going out of Mitzrayim is like going out of jail, and it would be mechayev the carbon Toda. So how does that work with what we just said? And they say that it wasn't considered going out of jail. Now, rather than answer this question, we're going to answer this question with another question. In truth, if you'll delve into this deeper a little bit, Hakushi le'idach gisa. The question is actually not to ask from the Shulchan Aruch on what we just said in our Sikha, that going out of jail, going out of Mitzrayim is not considered jail. The truth is, the question is on what the Alter Rebbe says in Hilchos Pesach. Why? Because in another place, Harei Abarazok in Pesach, the Alter Rebbe paskins elsewhere, Shemisha Yachavas Beis Asurim Al Yidei Iskein Nefashos. If someone was in jail for a matter of life and death, which means his life is now at stake, or if he went in for something that's monetary, which means his life is not at stake, but only if he was locked up in iron chains, then he's chayiv goimel. Someone goes to jail where his life is in danger, or he goes into jail where he's behind bars, then which would also apply for a carbon toda, because the source of the fact that these four things obligate us today, nowadays in Goimel, comes from the fact that in the time of the Beis Hamikdash we were chayiv in a carbon toda. So b'meila, what does Alter Rebbe say over here? What's considered jail? Either if your life is in danger, or if you're behind bars. So the question is now, how does the Alter Rebbe say in Hilchos Pesach that going out of Mitzrayim is like going out of jail? If the Alter Rebbe says in Hilchos Birchas Hanehenin that going out of jail means going out from behind bars, and in Mitzrayim they weren't behind bars. So at first we asked the question from the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch on what we said here in the Sikha, that going out of Mitzrayim is not going out of jail. But now we flip the question over on its head, and we're asking on the Alter Rebbe himself, how could the Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch, Hilchos Pesach, say that going out of Mitzrayim is like going out of jail, if in Hilchos Birchas Hanehenin the Alter Rebbe says that going out of jail means going out from behind bars, which did not happen when the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim. So now, you have to figure out, based on these questions, what is considered going out of jail, and is going out of Mitzrayim considered going out of jail? And if it's not, then why are we making a zeichel a carbon toda at the carbon Pesach, at the Seder? And we're not going to answer this question yet, but we're going to introduce a new question. And this question is going to be, why b'chalal are we making a zeicher to a carbon toda in a time when a carbon toda is not allowed to be brought in the Beis Hamikdash? So, if you can, bear with us, as they say in English. Put aside the question of the going out of Mitzrayim, whether it's considered going out of jail or not, and let's discuss this idea of making a zeicher to the carbon toda, and we're going to discuss this idea based on what we do with regards to the kapitel of Mizmer l'Seder, which we say in davening after Baruch She'amar. Oy Zayin. Yes, leimar bazeh b'haktim et kusha. So we're going to introduce a new question. Admur in case of the Alter Rebbe writes, this is in the halachas of davening. He says there's a minig in these countries not to say Mizmer l'Seder b'Shabbos v'Yom Tiv, because the carbon toda is not brought on these days, so therefore we don't say Mizmer l'Seder. So too on the days of Pesach, since the carbon toda wasn't brought mishum chametz sheba, because it had the chametz dikah breads, the better Pesach, which was very close, either it already was after the time or even before the time, it's very close to the time when you can't have chametz, and therefore they wouldn't bring a carbon toda on Erev Pesach. So therefore we don't say Mizmer l'Seder, not on Shabbos v'Yom Tiv, not on the days of Pesach, and not on Erev Pesach. Harei mefurish she'ein las zeicher l'carbon toda b'Pesach afil al dibur v'chulu. So we see that we're not supposed to make a zeicher to the carbon toda, even through words, even by saying the words of Mizmer l'Seder. If we're not supposed to make a zeicher even through words, by to the carbon Toda by saying Mizmor Seder in a time when the carbon Toda wasn't brought. How could the Alter Rebbe tell us in Hilchos Pesach to make a zecher to the carbon Toda through an action, which is even more than through words? But Advarim Kal V'Chaimer, and it's going to be a Kal V'Chaimer. The Kal V'Chaimer is going to be from words to action. And in order to understand this Kal V'Chaimer, we have to go back to the origin of why we don't say Mizmor Seder on Shabbos, Yom Tov, Pesach, etc. Because there is a daya brought in the Tur that we do say Mizmor Seder even on Shabbos, Yom Tov, and even on Pesach. Taba daya shetzrichim leimar Mizmor Seder. The daya that says that you do say Mizmor Seder. Gam b'Shabbos, Yom Tov, Pesach, v'chulu. Mefurish b'Tur. The Tur explains that there's a day that says that you should say Mizmor Seder on Shabbos, Yom Tov, and Pesach. There's no chashash, there's no fear that a person is going to actually think to bring a carbon Toda on these days. People are not going to confuse a carbon Toda and Mizmor Seder. That just because I'm saying Mizmor Seder, I should also think to bring a carbon Toda on these days. The Beis Yosef explains why would I not make this mistake? Because this mizmer of Mizmor Seder is not being said in the place of the carbon Toda, it's being said as a thank you to Hashem. The Bach on that tour says that carbon Toda was established to be said. Chazal tell us how special Mizmor Seder is. That when Mashiach comes, all the shirim that were said will stop. Will not be said anymore. Besides for the Mizmor Seder, which will still be said even after Mashiach comes. So we see how important Mizmor Seder is. Therefore, we shouldn't refrain from saying it even on Shabbos, Pesach, Shabbos, Yom Tov, and Pesach. So in other words, those who are saying that we should say Mizmor Seder, it's because they hold that the Mizmor Seder is not in the place of carbon Toda. It's for a different reason. Either because it's a Hidah to Hashem, thank you to Hashem, or because because it's a very special Mizmor that won't be batal loss and love, and therefore there's no reason not to say it. Comes out that those who hold that you should not say Mizmor Seder on Shabbos or Yom Tov or Pesach, their opinion is that it was established as a carbon Toda. So he's going to end later on the next page. He's going to end the question of the Kal V'Chaimer. So if we're not even saying Mizmor Seder on Pesach, because we don't want to, because the Mizmor Seder was established as in the place of the carbon Toda, and we don't want to mention the carbon Toda on a day that the carbon Toda can be brought. Why would the Alter Rebbe say to do a pu'ula, an action that is a zeichel the carbon Toda, if we can bring a carbon Toda on Pesach? Before we get to the end of the question, we're going to digress just a little bit to figure out what the Alter Rebbe holds. Does the Alter Rebbe hold that the carbon Toda was established that the Mizmor Seder was established in the place of the carbon Toda, or does he hold that it was established as a Mizmer or as a Heidah, as a thank you to Hashem? So he says V'chein mashma l'che'ere dasat morazakin. It's mashma that the das of the Alter Rebbe is that the Mizmor Seder is in the place of the carbon Toda. To Kaisev, because the Alter Rebbe writes in the beginning of Shulchan Aruch, Tzarech leimar parshas hakarbonis mu'umad. You should say the parsha of karbonis before davening, standing up. V'chein Mizmor Seder, also Mizmor Seder should be said standing. Dugmas hakar avasan shayim mu'umad, just like the actual offering of the carbon which was done standing, implying that there's a comparison between the saying of karbonis and the saying of Mizmor Seder to the actual carbon. And the Rashi says, and the Alter Rebbe says, with regards to Parshas Karbonis, Amru Chacham tell us that anybody who is involved in studying the halachas of Oila, As if he was makiv ha'ela. The Fichach says the Alter Rebbe, therefore, Teiv leimar b'chol yom parshas ha'ela u'mincha u'shlamim v'teida v'chatas v'ashim v'adai v'yashim talui v'karban ha'ela v'yered. And therefore we say all of these karbanas, including karban teida, in davening, because we want to be oisik with teidas ha'ela ki'ila hikid v'ela. Which implies that the recitation of Mizmor L'Seder is because you're saying it as if you're bringing it. And that's consistent with the fact that the Alter Rebbe holds to not say Mizmor L'Seder and Shabbos Yom Tov Pesach, because if you are saying it regularly in place of the carbon, then in the day that you don't bring the carbon, you don't say Mizmor L'Seder. So l'cheira, it's mashma that the Alter Rebbe holds like the day that carbon Mizmor L'Seder was established in the place of carbon Toda, and therefore you don't say it in Shabbos Yom Tov Pesach. But in truth, it's not true. This is not what the Alter Rebbe holds. It's almost like it's very clear. Because the Alter Rebbe writes very explicitly, V'yesh mekaymish in the halachas of tefillah, V'yesh mekaymish and ne'agim la'isef v'chulu mizmor l'seder. There are places that add mizmor l'seder in davening, L'fi shekol ha'shiros hasidin li'yibatel chutz mizmor l'seder. Because all the shiros will be bottled besides from Mizmor L'Seder. So Mizmor L'Seder is a very important shir, and therefore we include it in davening. The Alter Rebbe concludes, you should sing it, you should say it in a tune, because it's a shir, it's a song. So the Alter Rebbe is saying the same thing that the Bach says on the tour, that it was which implies that the Alter Rebbe holds that it was not established in the place of the carbon Toda, because it's a very special shira. But v'im came, based on this, we are going to go back to our question. But in that case, if the Alter Rebbe holds that the carbon Toda, the Mizmor L'Seder was established not in the place of the carbon Toda, but only because of the uniqueness of the shira, of the Mizmor, why does the Alter Rebbe say that you shouldn't say in the Shabbos Yom Tov Pesach if it's not in the place of the carbon Toda? Who cares? Why shouldn't we say it on these days just because the carbon Toda is not being brought? So therefore, we're going to answer that the Alter Rebbe takes a middle path. The Alter Rebbe holds that even though we don't say the Mizmor L'Shem Carbon, since we're at least mentioning the carbon Toda, therefore we shouldn't say it on the days that when the Beis Hamikdash was standing, the carbon Toda wasn't brought. And therefore the Alter Rebbe holds in the Madura Kama in the beginning of Shulchan Aruch in the earlier print, which is where he mentions it, that we should say it standing up. Since you're mentioning the carbon Toda, you should also stand up, just like they did by the carbon Toda. So in other words, the reason why it was established is not l'shem carbon. It was not established in the place of the carbon Toda. It was established because the Mizmor L'Seder is a very beautiful, special Mizmor, which won't be bottled even lost loving. But the Alter Rebbe holds that since you're mentioning the carbon Toda, it's explicitly Mizmor L'Seder, therefore you should not say it on the days that a carbon Toda wasn't brought, and when you do say it, you should stand. So the Alter Rebbe takes a middle path. In other words, he's not saying that it was in the place of the carbon Toda. It's in the place of the carbon Toda, but he still holds that you should not say it on Shabbos, Yom Tov, and Pesach. But now he goes back to our original question in the beginning of Isaiah. If the Alter Rebbe holds that even the mention of a carbon Toda should not be done on a day that we don't bring a carbon Toda, Vimkein comes out, if we shouldn't even speak out this Mizmor, which mentions b'derech agav, which mentions as an aside the carbon Toda, we're saying it to thank Hashem. We're saying it because it's a special Mizmor, but since it mentions the carbon Toda, we don't want to say it on Pesach, even though it wasn't established for this reason. Nevertheless, we're not mentioning it. So certainly we shouldn't do an action that's a replication or a mamish reminds us of the carbon Toda. So this is the question that we have on the Alter Rebbe. How can you tell us that we should make the 3 matzahs for the first night of Pesach out of one Yisar and Zeichel the carbon Toda, which is a pu'ula, an action that is reminding us of the carbon Toda, if we just elaborate it at length, that we don't want to even mention the carbon Toda on a day that the carbon Toda wasn't brought. So why does the Alter Rebbe say that we should make a zeicher to the carbon Toda on the first night of Pesach? So before we get to the question of how could the Alter Rebbe say that we're going out of Mitzrayim, if going out of Mitzrayim is that we are the mechuyev in the carbon Toda, because going out of Mitzrayim was like going out of jail. Before we even discuss that, we first have to ask the first question, which is the question of Zayin: how b'chlal does the Alter Rebbe tell us to make a zeicher to a carbon Toda if we know that we don't say Mizmor Seder because we're trying to avoid mentioning even b'dibur a carbon Toda on a day that a carbon Toda was not brought into the Beis Hamikdash. Okay. I know we've been at this for a while. We got to go a little bit deeper. We got to go Abisa Latifa in the minyan. In order to understand why we're making a zeicher to the carbon Pesach at the Seder, we have to understand a little bit better what exactly is the zeicher that we're doing. The Alter Rebbe said that we're making the 3 matzahs out of one Isarim. So we have to go back to the Rishonim, to the earlier, to the Deis in the earlier generations, which they are the origin and the source of the Alter Rebbe telling us to make the matzahs out of one Isarim. And it's going to come out that it's going to be a machlekes between the Rosh and the Mordechai of why we have why we are making the 3 matzahs out of one Isarim, or b'chlal why we're going to have 3 matzahs at the Seder. Let's take it slowly. Let's learn it inside. It's very gishmak. Yuvim kol zebaktim demokir adin zeh lasis hashalosh matzahs meisarin echad u'b'chlal me'arosh v'amordechai. The mocker of this din that we're going to make 3 matzahs out of one Isarin comes from the Rosh and the Mordechai. Omnom taimom shel Rosh v'Mordechai sheinos mizeh. However, the reasonings of the Rosh and of the Mordechai are different one from another. Biharosh, according to the Rosh, he says like this: why do we need 3 matzahs on the night of Pesach? First, we need to have 2 matzahs shleimus, 2 whole matzahs, like every yomtiv. Any yomtiv, any Shabbos, you have to have lechem mishnah. So you have to have 2 whole matzahs. But you also need to say the Haggadah on a broken piece of matzah. So it should be lechem oini, it should be poor bread. So therefore you have to have a 3rd matzah to be able to break it, to have a lechem oini. So the Rosh says you have to have 3 matzahs, 2 to be able to have shleimus when it comes to making the hamoitzi on the matzah, and 1 is the prusa, is the broken piece. Then the Rosh adds, there's a minig in Germany and in France, that we to make these 3 matzahs out of one isarin as a remembrance to the breads of the carbon Toda. Because someone who goes out of jail has to bring lachmei Toda. The lachmei Toda boy migimul minim shel matzah. And in the lachmei Toda, like we mentioned earlier, there were 3 types of matzah. There was chalois, rikikin, and revucha. Like we mentioned earlier, v'shalosh chalois esim isarin echad. And like we said before, 3 chalois are made out of one isarin v'chulu. So by taking our 3 matzahs and making them from one isarin, it would replicate what was done with the carbon Toda. And a yes that we went out of jail, that we're going out of jail on Pesach, we won't have to bring a carbon Toda. So we do a remembrance to the carbon Toda with the 3 matzahs being from one isarin. Ulam Mordechai Kasav. The Mordechai writes a little bit differently. He writes, therefore you need to have 3 matzahs as a remembrance to the lachmei Toda. Like it says that there are 4 types of people that have to bring a carbon Toda. And one of them is going out of jail. and he would bring a carbon Toda. Ubalachmei Toda, you give him mini matzah, but the lachmei Toda, there are 3 types of matzah, and therefore, on Pesach, they have 3 matzahs. Then he asks the question, even though by the lachmei Toda there were 40 chalois, not 3, if he did 4 instead of 40, he would be yotze his obligation. And of the 4, 3 are matzah and 1 is chametz. So yes, you could be yotze the mitzvah with a minimum of 3 matzahs. So therefore, we would bring, by bringing 3 matzahs, today we are remembering the carbon Toda. Harei. So there's a major difference here between the Rosh and the Mordechai. Shechilik bin the Rosh and Mordechai. Al din shalechen gimel matzahs. The idea that we're taking 3 matzahs, the Rosh has a different reason. The reason, according to the Rosh, that we take 3 matzahs is to have 2 shleimus and 1 prusa. V'tam zeicher l'teida hu rak al zeh shegimel elu eisem yisaron echad. And the zeicher l'teida is only the fact that the 3 are coming out of 1 isaron. According to the Mordechai, it's not just that we're bringing the 3 matzahs out of 1 isaron as a zeicher to the carbon Toda. The whole concept of the 3 matzahs is a zeicher to the carbon Toda. So we have here 2 opinions: the Rosh and the Mordechai. The Rosh says the reason why we bring we have 3 matzahs is to have 2 shleimus and the prusa. And the fact that we're making the 3 out of 1 isaron, that is a zeicher to the carbon Toda. And the Mordechai says the whole concept of 3 matzahs is a zeicher to the carbon Toda. Valpiza, lefi aniyas daiti. Ein loymar k'meishakasav ha'carbon nesan al rosh. You don't have to answer and explain the Rosh as the carbon nesanel, which is one of the commentators on the Rosh says. The Maksha al Rosh, the carbon nesanel has a question on the Rosh like the Mordechai had on himself. Even though B'lachmei Toda there's 40 and there's of which there are 30 matzahs. If you would have baked just 4, you'd be 8. Comes out that you have the 3 types of matzah, and therefore we bring 3 matzahs on Pesach. So this is how the carbon nesanel explains the Rosh. Says the Rebbe, oh no, Pia now, but this is unnecessary, totally unnecessary. Because according to what we just said, there is no question on the Rosh. The carbon nesanel is saying, why are you bringing 3 matzahs if there's 30 matzahs? But according to the Rosh, it's not a question. According to the Rosh, the 3 matzahs are coming from a different reason. The comparison between our matzahs and the lachmei Toda is that the 3 are being made out of the same bread, out of the same isaron. And he says more. Even if the carbon nesanel's answer was that b'di'eved you could make 3 chalas and it's enough. 3 lachmei Toda and it's enough. 3 of matzah and 1 of chametz. So he says no. He says even if you would say that it is ma'akif, even if the halacha was that you have to have 30 matzahs, still the Rosh would make sense. Because the number of matzahs is not relevant here as a zeicher to the carbon Toda. It's all about the quantity of the flour. That the quantity of flour being used for the matzah on Pesach is the same as the quantity of flour being used in the carbon Toda. But the number of matzahs by the carbon Toda is not connected to our Pesach. So according to the Rosh, there's no question. The reason why we're doing 3 matzahs, even though by the carbon Toda there were 30 matzahs, we still do 3 matzahs because of the fact that we need 2 shleimus in the prusa. And nevertheless, but in those 30 matzahs, each set of 3 were made out of 1 isaron, and therefore we also use 1 isaron. But according to the Mordechai, that the number of the matzahs is the remembrance to the carbon Toda. If the din of shleishim would have been ma'akiv b'di'evet, that you have to have 30 and not 3, then the matzahs, then the number of 3 matzahs would make no sense. Therefore, the Mordechai has to rely on the fact that b'di'evet 3 matzahs is enough, because otherwise there would be no reason to bring 3 matzahs in our Pesach. There's one more paragraph here, one more detail. And he's going to say like this in this detail. According to the Rosh, or rather, whether the Rosh or the Mordechai, if you're going to make only 4 matzahs, only 3 matzahs and 1 chametz, then you would have to make the 3 matzahs out of 10 isarin. Because you have to use 20 isarin, 10 for the chametz, 10 for the matzah. So if you're only going to make 4 breads, then you would have to make 1 bread out of 10 isarin, and then the other 3 breads out of 10 isarin, not out of 1 isarin. And then the Rosh's idea of making 3 matzahs out of 1 isarin is totally lost. So in other words, for the carbon asano to rely on the fact that b'di'eved you could only make 4 breads, 3 matzahs and 1 bread, it goes counter to what the Rosh is trying to say. The Oid, we'll say it inside. How could the carbon asano say that the Rosh is telling you that you make 3 matzahs out of 1 isarin? Because b'di'evet, if you would have made out of 4 your yetze, that a din zeh, this din that you're yetze with 4, who davkim afa es agimel matzes me'asar yisreinim, only works if you used all 10 yisreinim. Ubenidin di dan adi yisem es agimel matzes me'asar echad. In our case, we're making the 3 matzahs out of 1 isarin. So if we're relying on the fact that b'di'evet you could make only 4 breads, 4 loaves by the carbon Toda, it's totally inconsistent with what the Rashi is saying, because then you'd be making the 3 matzahs out of 10 isarin, and on Pesach you're making 3 matzahs out of 1 isarin. Mashekin la Mordechai, shezeu rak al tam al zeh shetzarech li is gimel matzahs. But according to the Mordechai, that the connection between Pesach and the carbon Toda is the number of matzahs. The quantity of the kemach doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you would have to make 3 matzahs out of 10 esreinim. Only the number of matzahs is important. So let's repeat what we just said in Ois Ches. In Ois Ches we introduced that the Rosh tells us that the reason why we have 3 matzahs is 2 prusas and a shleima. And the zeichel of carbon Toda is that the 3 matzahs are made out of 1 isarin. The Mordechai says that the zeichel to the carbon Toda, that the reason we have 3 matzahs is zeichel of carbon Toda. Then the Mordechai says, you have to have 30 matzahs, not 3 matzahs. He says, but the Eved, you yetze with 3 matzahs. The carbon asano brings the same question and answer, very similar question and answer on the Rosh. Says the Rebbe, based on what we taught you over here, that the Rosh's reason for 3 matzahs is not as a zeichel carbon Toda, then what the carbon asano is saying doesn't stim, doesn't clap. Because number one, even if you were to tell me that I would not be yotze with 3 matzahs, you need to make 30 matzahs, it still wouldn't be a problem, because according to the Rosh, the 3 matzahs are not based on the number of matzahs in the carbon Toda, it's based on a different reason. And if you make 30, then 3 of them would go from 1 isarin, which is exactly what the Rosh is saying, that the 3 matzahs of Pesach come from 1 isarin. The other problem we have with the carbon asano is that if we're relying on the fact that you could make 3 matzahs and that's enough, then the quantities don't match, because by the carbon Toda the 3 matzahs would be made out of 10 isarin, and by the carbon Pesach the 3 matzahs are made of 1 isarin. So the carbon asano's question on the Rosh is not a question, and his answer on the Rosh is not a good answer, because the Rosh is very simple. The remembrance of the carbon Toda is from the quantity of the flour that 3 matzahs were made out of 1 isarin, and the number of matzahs is based on a different reason. Al pi anal muvan shechilu gadol ben tamaras v'tamar Mordechai ben Agili. So it comes out that there's a major difference between the Rosh and the Mordechai. According to the Mordechai, where you're talking about the number of matzahs as a zeicher for the carbon teda, so then the zeicher that's being made is in actuality, and it's in a revealed way. It's open to everyone. Everyone sees 3 matzahs at the Seder, zeicher carbon teda. According to the Rosh, the number of matzahs is for a different reason. It's just that we're making these 3 matzahs out of a specific quantity of flour, and that is our zeicher to the carbon teda. Nobody knows how much flour went into your matzah exactly. So therefore, when they see the 3 matzahs, they're not seeing an open zeicher to the carbon teda. Openly, you don't see the amount of the flour. What are you seeing? 3 matzahs, which has nothing to do with the carbon teda. It has to do with a totally different reason. So it comes out that according to the Mordechai, you're making a open, revealed zeicher to the carbon teda, and according to the Rosh, it's a more concealed, subtle zeicher to the carbon teda. The Admur Azaken. Had a case of Betam Kichas Gimel Matzahs Karash. The Alter Rebbe writes, with regards to the number of 3 matzahs, he writes like the Rosh. The Alter Rebbe writes in Hilchas Pesach, Shemulvad Beis Matzah Shleimus Shetzarech Liftzei Alink Mibishar Yom Tiv. Besides the 3 matzahs, the 2 matzahs that are Shleimus, a whole matzahs, which you have to make Hamoitzi on them, like you do in any other Yom Tiv. Tzarech Liyes Eid Prusach As Mishum Lechamayni. You have to have another piece as Lechamayni. V'im came Leisvir Leitam HaMordechai Bazeh. So that comes out that he doesn't follow the way of the Mordechai. But he's talking when he says to make a zeicher to the carbon teda, l'daita ya zeicher the carbon teda, who not in the number of matzahs, but the fact that you're making these 3 matzahs from 1 isaron. Nimtza shegam shitas admor hazaken isha ein oisim zeicher gol the carbon teda. So after all this, it comes out that according to the Alter Rebbe, even though he says to make a zeicher to the carbon teda by having the 3 matzahs made of 1 isarin, but it's only a subtle connection. It's not an open connection. It's not a revealed connection. It's not an obvious connection. It's a subtle connection. So now, if we're going to go back to Zion, where we ask the question: if we're not saying mizmer l'seidah, how can the Alter Rebbe tell us that we should make a pu'ula as a zeicher to the carbon teda? There's no stira. Mizmer l'seidah maskir begol. Mizmer l'seidah openly, in an obvious way, mentions the carbon teda. Therefore, we refrain from saying it on a day that we don't bring a carbon teda. And even if you remember, the Alter Rebbe holds, like we said previously, that the Alter Rebbe holds that the reason we say mizmer l'seidah is also not l'shem carbon teda. So in other words, the mizmer l'seidah is not being said l'shem carbon teda. But since it mentions begolui the mizmer l'seidah, the word the carbon teda, therefore we don't want to say it on a day that there's no carbon teda. But in the case of the matzah on Pesach, since the connection is not obvious, it doesn't concern us. We're not worried about the fact that the carbon teda is remembered because it's not done in an obvious way. So now we've answered our question from Zion. Why are we doing a zeicher carbon teda on Pesach? And the answer, b'kitzur, is that it's not a zeicher begolui. It's only a zeicher behelim, and therefore it's not a major issue. So carbon mizbel is said that we don't say, but a zeicher to the carbon Toda, and the fact that the matzahs are made out of a certain, the same amount of flour that was used for the lachmei Toda, that is something that's very subtle, it's very concealed, and therefore it's not a stira. Now let's go back to our question that we asked in the Zvav. The question that we asked in the Zvav is, how does the Alter Rebbe tell us that we should make a zeicher to a carbon Toda? Because we were yotzim beis ha'asurim. If be'etzem Mitzrayim wasn't the beis ha'asurim and there wasn't metal bars, and we said, like we said in the earlier in the Sikha, it wasn't a yoysh lechoysh mitzal maves. So why b'chlal do we need a carbon Toda? And if we're not even going out of jail? That question is going to be answered in this Yud. Pia now. Based on what we just said in Eis Zayin and really in Eis Ches and in Eis Tes, that the zeicher that we have to the lachmei Toda on Pesach is not a complete zeicher. Yeshlema, we could say Shemasha Kosuv v'onu Pesach yatzonu beis ha'asurim. What the Alter Rebbe says that we went out of jail on Pesach, he doesn't mean literally that Mitzrayim was a jail. It's also a ke'ein jail. Who gamkin al derech zeh Mitzrayim arei rak ke'ein beis ha'asurim. Just like the zeicher to the carbon Toda is not a complete zeicher, it's only a subtle zeicher. Also, going out of jail is not a full going out of jail because Mitzrayim wasn't a jail. It's like going out of jail. V'lei beis ha'asurim u'mechayev carbon Toda, but certainly not a kind of jail that would have obligated us in the carbon Toda. In other words, what's the Alter Rebbe saying? How would it fit into the words of the Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch? Therefore, we make 3 matzahs out of 1 isarin. Zeicher, remez bilvad, lelachmei Toda. We're making a zeicher, a remembrance, only a remez, a hint to the lachmei Toda. And we on Pesach, we went out of jail, not literally, it's like going out of jail. Remez bilvad, it's like a hint to a jail. Not literally a jail that would have obligated us in a carbon Toda. And this explains and makes it geschmack that the Alter Rebbe says, we went out of jail, out of the shibud. He already told us we went out of Beis HaSurim. Why does he add the words Meshibud Mitzrayim? And he's trying to tell us that he's trying to say the words Meshibud Mitzrayim to tell us that it wasn't mamish a jail. They were in the place that there was a shibud, and therefore it was like jail. And therefore, because it was like jail, therefore we bring like a zeicher a carbon Toda. Ubazeh is answered all of our questions. We explained that the Seder of Rashi is to say chavushe beis ha'asurim after the midbar, because the midbar was the mashal, was the example of jail. Mitzrayim is not considered a mashal, not considered a chavushe beis ha'asurim because it wasn't a place of cheshach v'tzal maves. We find that the Alter Rebbe says that we're supposed to make a zeicher to the carbon Toda on Pesach because we went out of jail. So that doesn't mean literally going out of jail. It means it was similar to jail, and therefore we make similar to a zeicher the carbon Toda, but it would not serve as a sufficient example of a time that you bring a carbon Toda for, a type of jail that you bring a carbon Toda for. Finally, we have Eis Yud Aleph, which is the Hira, and the Hira is going to be from the fact that even though it's not Yeshei Cheshach V'Tzal Maves, it's still considered Shibud Mitzrayim, and it's still compared to a jail, and that's the Hira for our Golus. That even when things that don't seem so bad, but fart, it's not what it's supposed to be, and therefore we have to get out of Golus. Hira me'anal. Anytime that a Yid finds himself in a Shibud Mitzrayim, in a Golus, all the Galuyos are named after Mitzrayim. Despite all of the good that the person has, he's still in jail. It could be compared, at least as by example, to a jail. Of being in the darkness and in the shadow of death. So much so that it's compared to a case where a person has to bring a carbon teda. And as long as the person is in galus, where the alakus, godliness, does not shine in a revealed way, the alakus that's inside of him is in jail. By cheshek, by the darkness, and by the klippah that's called death. So as long as the person is in galus, the alakus is not meir begilui, and the yes that the alakus is not meir begilui, therefore he's in jail. He's stuck in a place that's almost something that he would be chayav a carbon teda for. Therefore, every single day, constantly a person has to wait, eagerly await, and beg. That Mashiach should come and take us out of the spiritual Beis Asur, the spiritual jail, Beis Asurim Agashmi, from the physical jail that we are in. And he should bring us upright to Eretz Yisrael, to our holy land, to the Gourarie Mitzvah Shlema. May it be mamish hayom today, b'meirav yameinu.